Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Legion of the Damned, the Poison Chalice, out June 9th on Napalm Records. This album has 10 tracks, 48 minutes in length, and this is the band's 8th full-length studio record. They are a Dutch blackened death metal band. The design of this record is really interesting, and I really enjoyed it because it felt like a hybrid model, using some intros to set up the track musically from a mood standpoint, atmosphere, and even from a lyrical content, and then using the ability to bleed out of tracks and bleed into the track that comes after, so there's a sense of uninterrupted sequence from one song to the other. Using these two different approaches works really well. It makes the album feel alive, more dynamic, more fluid, more engaging, not necessarily giving you all its secrets. You don't know exactly how you're going to be moved from one song to the next until you get there. So this ability to create this hybrid model in terms of design, delivery, and overall fluidity makes the album engaging, makes the album entertaining. As far as the sound is concerned, this is definitely a blackened death metal album with a lot of thrash metal elements, but to me, three core elements of the sound really put its fingerprint on the overall signature that this album offers, and that is the overall production, drums and guitars, and even the impact that the production has on drums and guitars. This is a big sounding record. It's a record that has a lot of volume, has a lot of texture. It feels a lot more layered, not as driven, not as direct to the point. Even when it's directed to the point, you still feel like the song has a lot to give, that has not just depth, but it has width into it. This allows the tracks to feel like they can give you more. The production cleans up all the edges, allowing the sound to be crisp, to be defined, better for the listener in terms of understanding what is happening with the drums, bass, guitars, vocals. Where are they going, where they're taking you, and what are the roles that each one of these elements have. So while not being a completely super produced record, super defined, super crisp, super clean, it's a record that's clean enough in order for you to still feel the brunt of the blackened elements of their sound, feel the brunt of the death metal elements of their sound, and then the little spices that those thrash elements bring in some songs in order for you to deviate a little bit more, creating more ebbs and flows within the tracks and from track to track. So sound-wise, it feels very complete. It's an album that doesn't leave you wanting more. It gives you a sense of being satisfying to your needs when you're going through it. Now, this production has a really nice impact on drums and guitars, like I said, on the drums, pushing them more consistently to the forefront, and I was not expecting that. I was expecting the drums perhaps to be a little bit more of a passenger, not necessarily the driver at times. But the heaviness of the drums, the volume of the drums definitely allow the overall big experience of this record to come to life. And that is a great impact. The drums sound phenomenal. They don't overpower everything within this record, but they definitely make you feel like you have to pay attention to them. They're always a little bit closer to you than perhaps expected, but not too close that you can't see what's behind them. That fine line is really important for an album like this. Then the impact of the production on the guitars, and the guitars overall surprised me. I was expecting this album to have a little bit more of a guitar-centric approach. Start off, end off in terms of where the guitars take you. Have them on the driver's seat, let them control the experience, allowing the album to be perhaps more gritty, more driven, but always feel like the guitars are the ones dictating the experience. They help the experience, but they don't dictate the experience, and that's where my surprise lies. Also felt a little bit surprising the approach that they took, allowing the guitars to have dual roles and matching those roles, allowing them to work in parallel with one another, sometimes coming together as one, but more often than not piggybacking off of what each one of them is doing in order for the album to have a little bit more life, a little bit more mobility sound-wise, and also injecting a lot of more melody, which then has an impact on the atmosphere and your perception of the lyrical content. So I like when the guitars felt thicker because they matched the drum sound, and that created that robust experience that the album has. But every time that happened, the guitars also broke away from that wall of sound, creating a little bit more melody, almost a darkened melody that made the heaviness of the record really come to life. You can only feel the real heaviness of an album when there's something to compare with, and on this album you have that melodic side of the guitars that really allows the heaviness to come into the forefront because you're creating a very distinct yin and yang between those two elements. And that is pretty much the life force and the lifeline of this record from start to finish. It's a very consistent formula that they used across every single song, but in terms of how they use it is what changed from track to track. I also have to say that the guitar solos on this record are outstanding, always adding value to the songs. A lot of old school elements in those solos, not necessarily in the sound of the solos, but more so in the execution of the solos and where they would place within the tracks. And I love this for a band like Legion of the Damned. You can have an old school experience in your sound while feeling like it is a more modern experience. And that's exactly what this album offers across all of its sound elements and the production behind them. When it comes to the vocals, consistent performance from start to end, no deviations, a little bit of the red line or the glue that keeps it all together. And in some tracks where you feel perhaps a little bit more of a brunt of the death metal side of the band, a little bit more of the brunt of the thrash metal side of the band, where there's a little bit more melodic influences, it's nice to have a blackened experience in the overall vocal approach that stays consistent, like I said, from the first all the way to the last song. And it's just a perfect approach for a band that has this kind of sound. All around, I really enjoy this record. It surprised me, like I said, on the guitar side, but it didn't surprise me with a negative experience. It surprised me with a positive experience. I would have still liked to see the guitars perhaps push a little bit more into the forefront at times, but that drum sound really took me over, really won me over. And the more that I listened to this album, the more I connected with the drum sound on one hand and how melodic the guitars were on the other. This yin and yang really made for a fun experience. Listen to this album, and then when you have songs that have great hooks in the choruses, really catchy choruses, allows you to have heavy tracks, but heavy tracks that are memorable, that don't blend one with another, becoming really difficult to see the forest from the trees. This is an album that has a lot of balance, but it still has a lot of uniquenesses from track to track. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Contamination. This is a heavy driven track, killer riffage from start to end, and it really jumps out at the listener. It's a track that jumps out because the guitar sound has elements that allow it to jump out, even though the drums are very powerful and steady from beginning all the way to the end, really giving a heavy consistency to the overall sound experience, while the guitars are pushing it a little bit more driven, a little bit more linear at times, weaving in and out, creating melodic moments, creating heavier moments, thicker moments, but still making the song have movement, which is really important because it never became stagnant. Very layered, very textured sound, specifically coming from the guitars. The vocals add consistency to the overall experience, and then it's one of those tracks that has a great, memorable chorus. They do that really well. They simplify the choruses in a way that makes them feel like they're just earworms, and that allows the songs to have their unique fingerprint, making them jump out and stand out in the crowd. Next we have Progressive Destructor, another great guitar sounding song. The deeper you drive into this track, the deeper you feel like the guitars have a great impact, not in your face, but a great impact in terms of the nuances that they give, in terms of the influences that they offer to the heavier side of the song, but also to the little bit more driven side of the song. It allows the guitars at times to break through the walls that are built by the overall drum sound. Once again, killer riffage from start to end, allowing you to feel like this is a track that's super fluid, super fast, coming at you with a lot of aggression, with a lot of intensity, old school guitar elements throughout, specifically in the solo sections, which were outstanding. Some of the best, if not the best, on the record. Last but not least, Savage Intent. The drums and the overall sound feels thick in this track, and because it feels thick, it doesn't move at the same speed as Progressive Destructor, for example. It moves a little bit slower. The vocals balance things out. The drums have that sense of grounding the track, and then when you put that grounding of the track with the consistency of the vocals and the guitars falling somewhere in between them, you have a song that is very balanced in its processes. It doesn't really fall apart. It contains itself within itself. The melodic elements of this song break down that slowerness of the song. It breaks down the texture of the song. It allows the track to feel like it gains some ebbs and flows just by peeling some of the layers off and allowing that darkness to come into the forefront with that overall melodic presence. The solo really stands out. Solo sections, solos throughout the entire record really stand out. This one is also an outstanding one. Perhaps one of those that's a little bit more elaborate, one of those that goes a little bit further than expected, and because of that really gives life and energy to this song. It's the moment within the track where you feel like the song is really able to breathe and release itself from the heaviness of chains that the overall track has outside of the walls of that solo. This is it, Legion of the Damned, the Poison Chalice, out June 9th on Napalm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.